Hi, this is Mike, and I'm by myself today. It appears that Chris won't be making it today. He's up in Costa Mesa doing a keynote speech, I guess. So I'll be on my own, and this is 3D in Review for the week of 15th through the 19th of September 2014. So, without having Chris to banter with, I guess I'll get right into the news. However, we do have a special guest crasher. We've got Adam from Occipital coming in. It's their 1-year anniversary with their structure sensor, and as you know, I'm a big fan of it. And you're probably wondering what I've got on my head here. I've got my magnifying glasses because I've been working on one of my 3D printer, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the show. So just stay tuned in for that. But let's kind of move on and into the first item, and that is NASA's finally going to launch their 3D printer into space. So let's go ahead and hit off to that item there, and so there you go. So down at 3dprint.com, it appears that Eddie Cressiton wrote an article about this and kind of goes through and talks about all the testing and the possibilities of problems considering zero gravity as well as its launch into space and the number of G's that it may pull that could create some problems in it surviving. It's interesting if you look at some of the, obviously these are tests, but it looks like it's a standard. Hey Adam, how are you?
Hey, Michael, good. How are you?
Okay, Adam is joining us right now, and right now I'm in the middle of doing the news items, Adam, so let me get through those, and hopefully, I don't know if you saw my email, but Chris won't be here today, so hopefully you can play a dual purpose. We'll talk about Occipital, and then maybe we'll banter back and forth. You did get the liner notes for today, so maybe you have some tips and tricks you can share with us as well.
Okay, sure.
All right, so I don't know if you can see the screen right now, but I'm talking about the 3D printer that they're going to be sending up in space tomorrow, if I remember correctly, and just kind of talking about the issues that they may have, which is zero gravity, as well as the G's that it will pull going up into space and what it will do to this. Obviously, with zero gravity, as you're probably aware, with FDM printers, you essentially using 3D or gravity to your advantage by laying layer upon layer. And without that gravity, though, is it going to stay in place? So it'll be interesting how they solve that.
Yeah, that does seem kind of an interesting environment for 3D printing, just given the need to have the material lay properly on the build platform and not be affected by gravity. That's interesting.
Yep. So as mentioned, it will be going up tomorrow, so hopefully they'll have some specials on it that we can capture. I'm assuming they will, since it's been in the news as much as it has. So we'll probably hear a lot more about it. You know, the big advantage that they're saying for putting 3D printers in space is that not just to have the ability to make small parts for the International Space Station, but also in the future when we actually go to Mars or other things, that we're going to have some self-reliance capability of creating our own parts. So again, a very important step. It's kind of interesting that we're seeing more of it now, but I think we can thank the RepRap movement for a lot of what's going on. So moving on to the next item. I don't know if you saw this, Adam, but essentially, and thanks to 3ders.org, and there's been several other comments in the news, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time other than I wanted to make some comments about it. Dremel is releasing what they call the Idea Builder, and they're going to have it in Home Depot. It'll be on Amazon, but really all they're doing, and I know if you're probably familiar with the Dremel tools. I've got one. You probably have one.
Yeah.
So it's a name in the, what would you call it, the maker or the self-doer market. So now they've got into 3D printers, but all they've really done is rebadged a product from FlashForge called the Dreamer, or the Print Dreamer, if I remember correctly. Except instead of dual extruders, which is a little bit more, it's only got a single extruder. Other than that, it's almost identical to it. So what does that mean? Well, FlashForge has made some success on Amazon. They're a Chinese company with making originally actually maker-bought clones, and in some cases better than the maker-bought clones. So they've kind of obviously taken their own experience and built their own device. But some people have been complaining on Amazon that the quality of the printers have not been up to par. Parts have been breaking fairly quickly. But they say that they've been improving things as they've been going along. So hopefully they've got all the bugs worked out on this thing, and Dremel's making the right choice and moving forward with it. I
Well,
looked at the Flash Forward Dreamer a couple of months ago, and I think I mentioned it on a previous 3D in review, as being a neat printer for its price. I think it's like $1,300, and especially being a dual extruder and a fully enclosed environment, which is
mhm,
unheard of. And if you know the MakerBot prices, and plus it's a heated bed, so they've got a lot of advantages for a printer that's about $1,300 versus MakerBots, which are twice that and don't provide a heated bed.
mhm,
And a lot of people have had problems with their removable head, so they're not out of the woods as well.
sure.
So it'll be interesting how well this will do. Go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
I was going to say I would be shocked if Dremel didn't um, uh, enforce some pretty strict quality control requirements for this, just because as a brand they're known to make such great tools, not just in the maker world, of course, but throughout the universe of people who would use Dremel tools. So I would hope that this would be a nice high quality printer, and wow, the price point's pretty incredible as well for what it is.
Yeah, as it says here, $12.99. But it says that it does not have a heated bed. It's only PLA only, which is
Hmm.
sad.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think it's 1,000. But the Dreamer at $12.99 may be the better choice because it
Possibly.
does all. It's a heated bed plus dual extruders. So
Mhm.
that's an excellent price. And again, I think I did read somewhere that's $9.99 for the Dreamer. I'm sorry, the Dremel version.
Okay.
As far as the quality of the Dremel tools, I would agree with you if we go back 10 years. However, a lot of people are complaining that some of their newer tools haven't had the same quality control.
Mhm.
So, maybe it's just they're coming out with lower cost versions. If you remember, Dremels were always the more expensive tools. I think Sears also licensed it. I got a Sears Craftsman, which is literally a Dremel just repackaged, and I've had that for 20 years. And
Sure.
I did. What's interesting, I did break the collet. I didn't, or it just broke on its own. Actually, it just disintegrated. That it's kind of like a clutch, and
Sure.
it's made almost like of a waxy material. Well, I just printed up a new one and replaced it, and it's working great. So, yeah, hooray for 3D printing. Okay, well, let's move on. Actually, if you want to look at the Flashforward Dreamer, you can go out to their website, the Flashforward USA, and there it is, $12.99, and it is in stock. And you can also head out to, let's see, I don't have it here, but Amazon has it on their website as well, and I think it's Prime, so you may avoid shipping if you go through them. And obviously, you've got Amazon's
Mhm.
money-back guarantee as well.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, the reviews are fairly good, other than some of them having some problems with components, especially through the shipping, maybe loose. So they suggest that you tighten things down, make sure
Mhm.
everything is working correctly. Some people have problems with some belts coming loose. Uh, but from what I gathered from the reviews, these people that are working with this particular printer have some either 3D printer experience or some handyman skills. So
Sure.
some people have complained it's a little work because you have to make sure you go from 220 to 110 before you turn it on.
Oh,
But
interesting. Yeah.
uh,
But it sounds like the problems people are mentioning are not uncommon to other extrusion type 3D printers. So I
that's
guess
exactly
part of
correct.
the
And
course.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So on to another printer that's in the news. It's the Upbox, which is also a Chinese company. And if you're familiar, Up has made some printers that have actually had some really good success. Uh,
Mhm.
I think the company Affinia, I don't know if you're familiar with the Affinia FDM printer, but it uses or licensed the same technology, and it has been very popular because even though it has a small bed size, it is one of the better little FDM printers out there,
Hmm.
and a lot of people swear by it. So I don't know. It was like earlier in the year they were sued by Stratasys or MakerBot for, or indirectly, I think Affinia was indirectly sued, but the parent company, which is Up, obviously was the designer of it because they were encroaching upon some of the techniques. I don't know where that went. Obviously, they're still moving forward with printers. This looks really stylish, but again, it's another ABS plastic type case. I like the looks of it, but it's very similar to the printer we saw earlier. It's a plastic enclosure. You have your spool of filament that fits in the side here. So unlike some of the others, you're kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Relegated to their spool size, so you
Sure.
can't use smaller. Well, you could probably use smaller ones, but nothing larger.
Yeah.
And then the build side is reasonable.
Hmm.
And then it says as a HEPA air filtration system, which is a little ironic from China, but I guess maybe not so, because
Yeah.
anything that they can prevent from running or going into the air is probably better. But there has been some complaint about the what they call the fine particles from obviously from ABS, but even PLA may cause problems with people who have congestion or
Sure.
bronchitis or any type of breathing type issues. So here it is opened up, and I don't know if this is a render or an actual model, but you know, again, standard FDM type style.
Mhm.
But I've noticed now, especially from the Chinese printers, they're all starting to enclose it. There has been some concerns in the past, and maybe that's why the Chinese are doing it, because they don't care, that Stratasys owns the patents for creating these enclosures, and that's why you haven't seen it in the past.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering if they've worked something out with them, or they're just saying the hell with it. But whatever, I think a enclosure is the way to go, because it, especially if you have some type of fan system in there to regulate heat,
Sure.
because it does prevent warping. I don't know if you worked with FDM printing at it, but it's notorious, especially for ABS, for creating problems. This is only a single extruder. As you can tell, the price is a little more pricier than the FlashForge Dreamer, but it does look fairly neat. So I don't know if the extra $500 is worth it there.
Sure. Well, it is a nice industrial design there, and as you're mentioning, I actually have not seen a whole lot of 3D printers out there that have had a HEPA filter or anything like that, and it does seem like that's recently become more of a hot issue around 3D printers that are using ABS and PLA.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I actually have one right next to me that I run on occasion, and I do feel a little different in my lungs, and I'm just doing PLA. So I think there is a point there. And again, an enclosure does help the system
Hmm.
maintain a balanced temperature, which is very important for ABS, especially large flat surfaces.
Yeah.
So on to my next item. Let's see, Chris has put some item in, so let me go back to my show notes real quick. Go back to me. Let's see, we talked about NASA. Okay, oh, this is an important one. I don't know if you're familiar with GrabCAD, but
Hmm.
I've used them on occasion. GrabCAD has been purchased by Stratasys, and it
Yeah.
looks like they were beat out by Autodesk, which I guess is a disappointment. I personally like Autodesk. I've got a good relationship with Jesse from Autodesk, who does the 123D series. They've got the new Spark series coming out. I'm hopefully going to have them on next Friday to talk about it, because they're going to announce it next Wednesday at the Maker Fair in New York. So,
I think if I'm correct, Autodesk bought Tinkercad a little bit back as well.
oh yeah, they did that several months back,
Hmm.
and you know, a lot of people complained about it, but I think they've shepherded it fairly well.
Yeah, it
Um,
seems like
it
it.
it's been in competition with their 123D design, which was also a web-based application. They're pretty much dismantling the web portion of that and making it strictly either a Mac or a PC type CAD program. So
Hmm.
that will leave Tinkercad for the web functionality. And if I remember correctly, does not have a PC or a Mac based applications. So Tinkercad handles the web, 123D will handle the desktop. And then if you're a little more advanced, there's what they call the Fusion 360,
Mm-hmm.
which just, and we mentioned it last week, has a subscription price now. I think it's like $300 a year if you're a professional. If you are an entrepreneur or a student, it's free for 1 year. So, and that's a fairly robust application. And if you know the price of SolidWorks, you know, obviously doesn't have a lot of the tools, but if you just need some really basic tools with some historical editing capability, that may be the tool to work with. And so we'll talk more about that when Jesse comes on next week. So here it is, GrabCAD. I've used them before. They've got a lot of good models, especially solid models, and that you can either purchase, in some cases for free. And I believe in one of our roundtable discussions, they were a part of it. So I'm glad to hear that. Hopefully we can see even some more advancements in their application. So that's pretty much Chris's items that I'm covering today. And then let's see where we can go from here. We can go in a little bit about, last night we talked about the New York show. I don't know if you were aware of that, but they did the 3D print show in London. And if you go out to 3ders.org, Christopher Barnet did a special article for them, and he goes through and he talks about it, and he has some videos of all the things that you could see there. And so I'm not going to talk any more about it, but if you go through, they talk about some of the printers. We talked about the big rep at one time. I think it's also got a big price, but if you need a huge Cartesian-based printer, there you go. But it's also very expensive. And then, so you can run through there. Obviously, if you want to get a 3D printed race car, actually, I don't think it's all the parts are 3D printed like that other car, and I can't think of the name right now.
Yeah.
That's been in the news, and just found out that Autodesk had their hands in that with their Spark design program with that all 3D. So on to the next item. I don't know if you're actually having you on, Adam. This might be in competition. I actually also own a Next Engine laser scanner, and I just found out that even though it's not mentioned by name, I could tell by the user interface, and I'll run this in the background here.
Sure.
But if you're familiar with their pattern, but I also am familiar with their software, and I've worked with it continuously, so I know this is a Next Engine laser scanner. So they're using that to scan in bones and that to create 3D models of this new finding, and I know you probably heard of it in the new, the Dreadnought. So I think it's interesting that, again, we're seeing lasers and 3D scanners being used outside of just for fun or the 3D industry, but in all kinds of sciences, museums, and so forth. And I just thought it's kind of neat. Next Engine is another reasonably priced. I think you can get it for about $4,000, their HD version. That doesn't include a lot of their advanced software, which drives the price up, but it is a good tool if you need something static on the desktop. There is a little bit of mobility, but not much, and that's why I've been working, and we can get to that in a moment. But let's see what else we have. I guess we can go right into you, Adam. So, Adam, why don't you tell us about yourself a little bit as being our guest crasher for this week. One of the things I've been in, actually, I supported the Kickstarter back, I guess it was September, so it's been 1 year now for the structure sensor, which was extremely successful. And I've been working with Jeff with some prototypes since, December. And I've actually developed some products myself for it that will advance things along. So Adam, without any further ado, can you kind of tell us what the structure sensor is and where are you going with it in the next year?
Sure. So it's like Michael said, we launched the structure sensor on Kickstarter just about exactly a year ago, a year and 2 days actually. And it was a year and 2 days ago, we were all very stressed out because until then, nobody knew that we were working on this device. And so we had no idea whether it would be a success or not, but we were really pleasantly surprised to see that it was. And that people like Michael immediately saw why it was interesting and significant and jumped on board. So, so I'll tell you a little bit about what the structure sensor is. It's a 3D sensor for mobile devices, and before it was launched, your options for 3D sensors were either in the highly professional realm, so things like the Next Engine 3D scanner that Michael mentioned that might be a few $1,000s, or something like a Microsoft Kinect, which was a really focused on gaming and user-facing versus world-facing. And so with the structure sensor, I guess we tried to create a really broad platform for 3D sensing on mobile devices, which unlocked a lot of capabilities that didn't exist before. 3D scanning is one of those possibilities. A lot of people look at the structure sensor and they think, this is a 3D scanner. In reality, 3D scanning is just an application for the structure sensor, and we have lots of ideas of other places that it'll go. Things like capturing entire apartments or homes as 3D models, enabling augmented reality gaming. We've started to see a lot of people from the medical world starting to use it as a medical imaging device. So it's been really fascinating over the last year as we've developed applications, as people out in the community have developed applications, as people like Michael have created really cool extensions for the structure sensor in terms of lenses to change the range or to attach different, I'll try not to ramble too much here, but I think what's been really fascinating has been we had this vision that we'd be able to launch this product that would unlock all sorts of different use cases for 3D sensing on mobile, and we've seen that happen in the last year, which has been really gratifying, really kind of exciting for us.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Adam. And like I said, it has been 1 year, and you've kind of changed the market for what a 3D scanner can be in size. Everybody's familiar with the Kinect, which a lot of the technology and the structure sensor is based upon. They all use the PrimeSense sensor from the company in Israel, which was bought out by Apple. And I've had both Nick as well as Jeff on, and I've asked them about that question, and you guys kind of been mums the word on how Apple's going to affect you, but cross fingers that they won't have any serious effect. But one of the things that I've noticed is that the infrared pattern and infrared camera type systems are becoming more and more involved. In fact, I'll go ahead and bring up my screen here. One thing I just saw, and again, it was from Israel, so I don't know if it's just a correlation, but another company in Israel has come up with something called what do they call it, the Aquila Android tablet. It's an 8-inch that provides the sensors built into it. I don't know what their chip is that they're actually, I think they do say it's a Qualcomm chipset, Snapdragon, but they're using this to do something obviously very similar to the structure sensor, but it doesn't look like this is going to be available for literally a year from now at about $1,000. So if you take in one of the lowest cost iPad minis, which I think you can get about $400 without LTE with 32 gigs, and throw in the structure sensor, I still think you can go home with $100 in your pocket. So that might be a better advantage. Plus,
well,
go ahead. Did we lose?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, that's definitely, and
you're breaking up a little bit. If you check your quality, go in your settings, you might be able to drop your bandwidth level.
Let me 1 second here.
Okay. Well, there you're back. Okay.
Okay. Great. So, what I was saying, this is one factor. Another one is platform. So a lot of people out there might prefer Apple. A great choice for Apple. Other people might prefer other Android devices, and we've kind of designed the structure sensor to be very flexible, so it's easy to add it onto any other device. I think the the tablets that we're starting to see that will emerge next year that have built-in 3D sensors are pretty cool, and they're a pretty nice package, really well designed. Some people, though, if they want more flexibility, we're still a pretty good option in that case.
Well, and again, it's a year from now. So if you look at most people and their technology, you could still buy one of these and then think you're upgrading, if that's the case. I don't know. If you look at the
Yeah.
quality on this image here, I can't say I'm really impressed. So uh, it, I don't know if you're getting any more than that. It's very similar to it, and again, other than it being in a tablet, but then you're limited. The nice thing about the structure sensor is that the structure sensor can be attached to a new tablet, and as we know, Apple will more than likely come out with a refreshed iPad line, and I'm
Mhm.
crossing fingers they're going to come out with a new iPod Touch 5-inch to replace that. And I'm a big fan of the iPod Touch, if you ask Nick and Jeff, because I have created a fully handheld system using Skinect that
Mhm.
really blows away anything else on the market. So I fought to ensure that we continue to support that.
Sure.
And currently it just supports depth information, but 4 eyes really works well for creating high detailed meshes. And there are other applications out there that do better color, and I've been working with ITSEs as well, sent them a lens system. But the fact that you can put a structure sensor, even this 8-inch that you see here, that's a
Mhm.
two-handed operation. So as you've said, I've created attachments. I've got my what I call the quick connect disconnect system for the structure sensor. So I can literally put the tab system on any. So I've created, a little case for the iPhone 5S as well as the iPod. I'm making one for the new 6 and 6 Plus as well, so that
Great.
you can attach a handle to it and literally use it for one-on operation. The next thing I'm trying to convince Nick is put in, like you have with the camera, you can use the volume button for your record
Hmm.
enable. The good thing about that is not just say using that, but there's a lot of Bluetooth remotes now that use that to create a separate, what would you call it?
Okay. Like a
Um,
control button of
yes,
sorts. Yeah.
a remote record button, so you could
Ah,
attach that to the bottom of the handle and use that. Um, so we'll see where that goes, but right now it's pretty cool. I can literally just extend my thumb over the screen, and even though the iPod Touch is not a big screen, I think it's only 3.5 inches,
mhm.
excuse me, it does allow you to see it, and if your computer's in the other room, you can still scan. And I also use it because the 4-eye system has what they call a sweet spot. You have to get closer to it. That's what gives it part of its better definition in the mesh. But you have to stay within that boundary. You can't kind of veer from it. So think of it like spraying using a spray gun. So that's literally how I kind of like paint my object. So it's kind of neat to do it that way. And
That's
I get some pretty good results. I'm trying to work with him creating a larger boundary box so that you can literally paint up and down an object. But it is working well, and I look forward to some of the advances. I know that you just came out with some new software. Can you talk about it, Adam? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing that a lot of people have been asking us about for the last year is color texturing, and we we working that would enable that. Um, first and foremost, just because the structure sensor is not integrated into the host device, we need to make sure that the depth camera in the structure sensor is really precisely aligned with the color camera in the host device. So we launched an app called Calibrator, which is a really, actually, fairly sophisticated application that's doing that alignment almost entirely automatically.
yeah,
And
and if I could interject there, and I have been working with it, and I've also worked with the expert version, and it's light and day. If you're not an engineer or somebody that needs to be precise, I agree with you. The software pretty much takes care of itself, and it's very
yeah,
intuitive. So hats off to you guys. So sorry
thank
for
you.
the interjection.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, yeah. So Calibrator to us was really it was a necessary step to take to ensure that once we did launch color texturing in the sample apps, the experience would be good for people. We didn't want to launch color and have people be concerned that it wasn't high quality because the calibration of the cameras might have been a little bit off. So, but now that calibrator's out there and people are starting to use it, we now have color enabled in both our structure app, which you can use with our uplink feature to stream data in real time to ScanX on a desktop. So now you can do color scanning in ScanX. And then the scanner sample app has color texturing enabled as well. And so we basically realized, well, these are all going to be ready on our 1-year Kickstarter anniversary. So we chose that as the date to launch it, and it's been kind of exciting. Just a lot of great feedback so far. It's pretty much what people have been hoping it would be, along with Calibrator, to have just really nice color textures coming from the iPad camera.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I've used actually both of them. I tried to get them in. I just downloaded them and also changed to iOS 8. Hopefully you'll be able to take advantage of some of the manual camera operations with the RGB camera in the iPads. And I will be interested. I'm not purchasing an iPhone 6, but I may get access to one to see how well it will work with that.
Yeah.
The problem with the iPhone 5S, and you don't really directly support it, is the FOV, or the camera is wider on it. So I've actually found it works not as good as the iPad as far as doing color textures. But it is small and compact, and with the 6 and the 6 Plus having larger screens, that might be the sweet spot for portability. So I guess I'll have to figure out how to get one way or another. But and plus it has the superior, it's got the A8 chipset in it. So, and I also talked to Jeff a little bit. It was Nick that you're going to be using Metal to your advantage, which a lot of people, if you're not familiar with it, Metal is the new 3D graphics engine that the developers can start using for gaming, but it also can provide performance improvements in other applications, and obviously the structure sensor may take that to its advantage in the future. There's another app that's been, and I can't really talk about it much, but I'll just mention the name, Room Capture. I mean, a lot of people have been asking about it, and I'll have to say that it's going to be a neat application, and I played with it, and I actually already see some new interest for it, and it will be part of the SDK. So if you're a developer out there, you'll be able to play with it, and it's actually pretty neat. And one thing that I noticed right off the hand is that even though the meshes aren't that sophisticated right now, it uses UV texturing. So it overlays. So we're not using vertex coloring anymore. So you literally are taking the quality of the camera. Where vertex, you have to have the mesh coloring, and that obviously gets distorted as your meshes get lower in quality. But I think that's important, and I think there's going to be a lot of advantages to that, because now you'll be able to map out a room. I was telling Jeff, hey, that would be great for those people in Minecraft or anything, or in gaming development where they need to immediately create rooms and establishments. Also, it looks like there's a rudimentary measuring tool, so I can see that being expounded upon. So it looks like there's a lot of things that were promised in the beginning that are now starting to materialize. So if you're not familiar with the structure sensor, let's see. Actually, I think is it structuresensor.io, if I remember correctly, is the website?
Structure.io.
Oh, thank you. I used to call it the structure.io, and I was told to stop that. But it's the structure.io is their website, and that'll take you out there. And I'm assuming that you can order one?
Yeah, actually, by the way, I took myself a video just to help with some of the latency.
Okay.
Apologize about that. Yeah, actually, one of the other cool things is that we're in full production now, and so where it used to be that you had to wait 30 days or sometimes longer to get a structure sensor, now we're shipping, and they're typically arriving within a week or so. So that was actually kind of exciting for us as well, because that was a little bit of a long road as well to get to that point.
Yeah, and Uh, Yeah, well, as you have identified in your video, I tweeted the other day, and I'll put a link in. You've got a great video that shows its production, how it was made. I mean, the fit and finish is excellent on this product. A lot of things were taken into consideration to dissipate heat and the quality of its workmanship. So, again, hats off. You've created a really nice product, except I want the red anodized aluminum. Where's that one at? I want that one.
There,
But
there's one that exists in the world.
oh, well, maybe I can beg and plead Jeff to get that one. Red's my
Yeah.
favorite color. Look good with that. Actually, I'm using a red and black tone for my accessories, and the inside I'm spraying with a rubber coating for all my lens attachments, so
Hmm.
it doesn't scratch the surface or the glass on top. I found that over working with it for a few months that plastic alone isn't enough, so we'll have a red rubberized finish inside of it. But yeah, very cool product. I look forward to seeing more. I look forward, since I do a little bit of iOS development myself, of what I can do with it,
Mhm.
especially to move my Four Eyes along. And I think it's a very cool product. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to be doing with your VR functionality.
Sure.
I think somebody's already attached this to the top of a Oculus Rift to create a full VR environment. So yeah, it could be very, very cool in the future.
Yeah.
So, Adam, you're welcome to stay with us, but I'm going to kind of go through my products, and then you're welcome to join us since Chris isn't here. If there's a project you've been working on, obviously the structure sensor would be one of them. That would be
Sure.
a gimme. But
Well,
maybe something that you're working on your own. So I'll let you have the
well,
floor with the
yeah. Well,
project
I
of
was
the
gonna
week.
say, unfortunately, I gotta actually jump off and join another call here. But thanks so much for having me on today.
Well, thank you, Adam, and I appreciate it. And again, that's Adam from Occipital, and again, their 1 year anniversary for the structure sensor. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Michael.
Okay. So I'm going to move on and talk about the projects of the week. And Chris didn't identify anything, but like I said, he's in Costa Mesa this week. He's part of a keynote speaking that just came up, and I don't know if he was aware of it or not. So I apologize that you're having to just listen to me today. But just kind of some brief follow-ups on my filling. Well, as you know, in the last couple of weeks, we've kind of talked about me creating my own filling using Mesh Mixer and my Form 1 in order to print it using Made Solids Firecast resin. Well, we've gotten to the point where I printed it and have sent it off to them. They are going to move forward with it, but then I thought, since I've done all the work for it, is it really worth it just for a filling to create a gold alloy? So we may back off on that. But also the other point, one of the reasons that I did this is that I felt like that it was important to see how 3D printing could help other industries like dental work. And in the past, I mean, there are more expensive processes. There's obviously some milling or CNC processes, subtractive methods, and then I guess there's some higher quality, more expensive SLA type printing that they use for dental work. So I was thinking, well, what could the Form 1 do? Well, one of the things that I found out immediately is a lot of the milling can be done for something like this in a matter of an hour or 2 hours. The filling itself took 3 hours at 25 microns, which is a little longer. But probably the most important thing is that then you have to, considering that I made a positive, you have to make a cast it by making a mold, and then you need to burn out the firecast material, which can take up to 11 hours. So you're looking at almost losing an entire day. So for fillings, obviously, it's not going to make sense to do it that way. They have other techniques. But for more complicated items like bridges and things like that, where you need all the tooth structure, this might work. Obviously, Mesh Mixer is not a tool like the dentists use. They've got something that looks at the gaps between teeth. It actually determines pressure so that when they set this, they can set it as close as possible to prevent bacteria from getting in between the spacing between the material and the tooth. So there's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration that you can't just find in Mesh Mixer. But it was an interesting project, and it looked pretty good, and I think I showed it last week. So if you go back to last episode, you'll actually see it, and I may put some pictures up. So the next thing is, gee, I don't even have it here, so I'll have to put it in the show notes, is the Ducati Girl, and that is a very cool little project. If you remember last week, we talked about the Ducati 3D printed motorcycle, obviously. So I think it was a 9100 or something like that. That is fully, it's kind of like a kit. You put it together, but it's missing something, and that's a rider. So I decided to create a rider for it. And if you remember last week, I had some images. Well, I finally printed it on the Form 1. It is about 8 inches long, and so I'm thinking by next week you might be actually see it at Maker Faire. So it'll be pretty cool, riding on this assembled motorcycle. So if you're interested in it, let me know. I can send you. I think I'm going to put it up on Umagine, which I'm going to show everybody how to get out to and set up an account. And like Thingiverse, it might be a better approach. They have a better, what would you call it, EULA about your materials. This is supported by the company Ultimaker, and it's been getting a lot of positive praise, so we'll go out there in a moment. And then finally, the other thing is, if you remember, I created, using the structure sensor, a scanner of my face as well as some other items, and my wife, to create what I call Winter is Coming. So this is, I made it out of a clear resin on the Form 1, and so kind of guess, winter is coming, ice, I don't know. But there you go. So it did print. There was some concerns that the staff may not print well, but it does look like that it printed okay. I'm going to probably spray it with a UV coating. Obviously, otherwise it will yellow over time, and we don't want that to happen. And if you can see that there's still a yellowish tint. Something, and maybe you can call in if you're a Formlabs user. I have not been able, if you pull it in out of alcohol, it's almost clear. But as soon as you dry it and you cure it, it becomes more of a translucence instead of a clear material. So if anybody has some way to keep it at a clear, let me know. It may not be available. And so that's about it. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, the latest app updates. We just talked to Adam for the structure sensor. And so we'll get into QA session. So some people have asked me, well, how do you determine the cost of a print? So as you know, both Chris and I support 3D printing, and we kind of taken different approaches to it. I charge by the hour. I charge $20 an hour because I feel that my printer is printing during that time. And I've looked at the pricing, and I found that at least with FDM, the price of the material is almost inconsequential. However, Chris uses more of a material cost with his Stratasys, which makes more sense because it is a more expensive material. So we have two different approaches. Like I said, I use hourly, which is what some people use. He uses more material cost. Now, the other question I have is, why do parts fail on your 3D printer? Well, that's an important question because actually it's been a couple of weeks ago, the heating bed on my Costa Clear failed. And so I pulled out the daughter board, which has the stepper motor drivers, but it also has some, you can see them here, some MOSFET switchers that are used for the heated bed as well as the hot end. Now, if you notice, this one does have a heat sink on the heated bed, but I don't know if it's adequate, but if you can look really close, you can see that this pin here has been burnt. So this thing was really drawing a lot of current, so I don't know if the heated bed just is too much for it, if I didn't have good contact there. I'm going to be replacing this entire board in the next couple of days, so I'll let you know. But the important thing is a lot of times heat is the major culprit in parts failure. Because you are running through, especially with the heated bed or the hot end, you are pushing through a lot of current through a device that has to regulate it. And if it doesn't have proper heat sinks, or if they've enclosed it without a lot of airflow, then eventually the parts do fail. So keep that in mind. The other thing is sometimes some manufacturers cut corners and they use parts that may not meet a certain spec criteria, and that could cause them to fail too, because you sometimes design things based upon a particular part, and if you put a lesser quality part in there, it won't now meet your specifications. So that's some things to look at. Again, Chris won't be here with his print whispering tip. And then pretty much this will be the only podcast in the can. We've got upcoming events. On the 24th is the start of Maker Faire in New York, and hopefully you'll be able to see my Ducati Girl there. And then here on the Central Coast, we have the Robotics Expo next Wednesday, which has been a popular event, and there have been other people with 3D printers. Obviously, since it's robotics, you're going to see different variations of robots or robotic things that are provided by some of the high schools. I think some of the universities and colleges will be there showing off some of their stuff. So it's a fairly interesting event. So if you're on the Central Coast, anywhere from Santa Barbara up into, even if you're up in San Jose or LA, you're welcome to come down. And it's a fun thing. But that's pretty much it for today, and I really appreciate you for hanging in there. And, well, hopefully Chris will be back with us next Friday, and you won't have to just listen to me. So that is All Things 3D in Review for the week of September 15th through 19th, 2014. Thanks. Bye.